Everyone, I want to welcome you. This is our first session of the new intake year for our master's program. I'm Nick Theo. I'm the academic program manager for our master's and PhD program. And with us is members of the Alef Trust team, and I believe one of our alumni will be here today. We'll go into more detail about the program. This is your time to ask questions to the staff, to alumni about the program, and then we'll have an open Q&A. So let me introduce you to Kendra Ford. And Dr. Ford is the course leader for the Masters, and she will introduce you to the rest of the team. So over to you to Kendra.
Thank you so much, Nick, and welcome everybody. It's good to see so many of you here today, and also to those of you watching the recording. We know that everybody has busy schedules, so we really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us today and learn a little bit more about our MSc. As Nick said, my name is Kendra Ford, Dr. Kendra Ford, and I am the program leader for the MSc program. I've been with Alef Trust for 8 years now, and have really watched the program grow with the complexity of our times. And some of what I want to talk about today, and what the orientation around this particular open house is focusing on, is a more broad general overview of the MSc as a whole. So that's what I'll talk about today. I'll talk a little bit about our ethos, a little bit about what we cover within the program, how the program is designed, and if you so wish to learn about each of the years individually and some of them more, and go into a little bit more detail around some of the aspects that I'll talk about today, we do have additional open houses where we will focus in on specific elements of the program, such as next year we're focusing more on year one, and then the next year will be more on year two, and the next on more of the applied sort of third year aspects of the program. Although I'll cover some of those elements today in what I'm offering. I'm hoping to talk maybe for about 10 minutes or so, and then we'll hand it over so that you can hear from one of our alumni who is here. And then hopefully we'll have a good amount of time for discussion and question and answer. That's usually a great way for all of us to sort of see, what inquiries are in the room, and, what questions you have about joining the MSc program. So to start off, our MSc program, as you probably already know, is a fully online MSc. It's designed as a 3-year program that we've really worked hard over the last several years to refine our approaches within the transformative education paradigm, which I'll talk about in a minute, to develop a learning program that really aims to get to the heart of personal transformation, as well as be able to develop um, research skills, scholarly skills, have the ability to do a unique research project, which happens in the third year. So all of our classes are designed both to be oriented towards topical learning, but they're also skill oriented in the sense of you're developing skills that are helping you learn more about yourself, your environments, as well as learn how to be a scholar and a researcher within the fields of transpersonal psychology, consciousness studies, and spirituality. Um, the way that works is that our first year is really designed to give the foundations in consciousness studies, and also the foundations in personal development in the way in which it's approached from a more transpersonal, transformative paradigm, which will likely have various elements that you'll already be familiar with, because I imagine most students come to this program with a certain level of experience with life and professional and educational experience, regardless of whether or not you've just finished a bachelor's degree. We even had students who have come in with PhDs and JDs, so any level of degree. But we also have students that come in who haven't been in school for 20 plus years, right? So regardless of sort of how you're coming into the program, we do acknowledge that you're coming into the program with some level of experience, right? Professional and educational. And at the same time, we work to establish some foundations that are really oriented to the way in which we approach learning, which transformative learning is often a different experience than what we most students are used to engaging with when it comes to university type learning. Transformative learning is really designed to invoke deep personal meaning that is in relationship to content and theoretical learning. So some of you may be used to education where you're sort of told what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to learn and and have exact information around this is what you're supposed to do and this is what you're supposed to get out of the reading. And while there's some support and structure around that, right? We do have a very robust and rigorous program. There is a lot of space, and we provide guidance around this in the form of understanding critical thinking and critical research and critical writing, right? There are very specific elements that we're utilizing within the transformative paradigm that allow you to step into a place of knowing with the content that we're engaging in the master's degree that really comes from a more embodied place. That isn't just about, I know the facts of this information, but it's really about how do I integrate, how do I understand this more from a embodied wisdom level that engages not just my mind, but also the emotional domain of the self, the somatic domain of the self, and perhaps the interrelational aspect of the self. These relational skills that are really, I think, essential in some of the work that we do, if not all of the work that we do, right? And there's lots of ways in which relational skills can transfer outside of the classroom. And so the MSc in that way is, yes, it's a master's program. We are validated by Livermore John Liver John LJMU, Livermore John Moores University. Sorry, I usually say LJMU, and I had to kind of got stuck in my mouth a little bit. We are a validated program, which means we also have to follow some strict academic guidelines. But because we are our own educational institute, we have a lot of leeway around how to approach those educational guidelines. And we think, from, not just thinking, but, we've worked on this in collaboration and through a lot of student feedback over the years. Thank you, Francesca. Um, that the program that we have designed really meets those rigorous requirements of an MSc, but it also brings something completely new and more, I think, to the educational paradigm. And in some ways, it requires more of a student to engage in the program in the way in which we are offering it. I mean, I'm sure you have looked at other master's programs in psychology, perhaps in transpersonal psychology, and the approach of other universities that don't work in the way that we do, you'll get the same content, right? Or you'll get some similar content. You'll learn about some of the histories of psychology and transpersonal psychology. And you might not have the same level of personal not development, but encouragement to engage at this embodied and personal level with the work. We really want to help students build skills that they can utilize in the classroom and also take out into the world. Now, if you've done any sort of studying in transpersonal psychology, way back when transpersonal psychology was criticized as sort of being, too invested in navel gazing, right? It's like, what are we doing all of this for? We're we're learning about all these wonderful meditative states. We're learning about psychedelics and how that opens up, our consciousness and engages different ways of understanding and being in the world. But then what are we doing with it? We're sitting in circle, we're talking about it, great, but then nothing's changing out there in the world. And I would say over the last 20 years, there's been a pretty specific shift in the way in which transpersonal psychology and those of us within the field have been approaching the work and have been building bridges between what we're learning in the classroom, what we're learning within our own experiences, and then how we're applying that out into the world. And so we've incorporated those elements within the program. So going back to the first year, when you enter into the first year, we focus on these foundations. We focus on developing an approach, or we introduce an approach to personal development that's oriented within transformative learning and within transpersonal psychology, integral development or integrative development. And then in the second year is when you start to you sort of build upon that. You take what you've learned in the first year and you start to develop more rigorous understanding of research, engaging in research, and scholarly and applied approaches to um, transformative psychology, transpersonal psychology. And in the second year, there are some opportunities which you'll learn about if you want to come to not the April open house. I believe it's the May or the June. Nick, you can help me with that. Um, in one of the subsequent open houses where we talk about the applied element, we'll talk a little bit more specifically around what this project looks like and how that really incorporates kind of, your passions, your interests. What do you want to do with this degree? How do you want to bring that into the world? And there's a space where it becomes kind of like an incubator where you get to work with your colleagues, your peers, and get support from faculty around formulating some of those ideas in a project form. Um, and then in the third year is when students engage in a unique research project, their dissertation. And this is really the culmination of the MSc. And while you have been provided learning and skills to prepare you for the dissertation, this original research project that you'll engage in, it's also tied to a module where you have two module leaders who will continue to provide more instruction and support around the various phases of conducting an original research project. And you get linked up with a individual supervisor. So while you don't have the same sort of classroom experience, right, that is really guided and really held as you will have experienced in the first and second year, you still have a supervisor that you'll be working with and some structure. So you're not just sort of out there in the world conducting research and trying to figure out how to put all the pieces together. We really try to make that a supportive um, process for students. And we find, for the most part, that students who come into year two and they come into research design and they're like, I don't like to do research. I'm not, this is just not my thing. By the time they get through the third year, or even somewhere in the middle of the third year, and they're engaged in their own research, they find out like a deeper passion and excitement around it. And so it's one of the reasons why we bring an alumni to our open house, because it's really nice to hear this perspective from the student. And I'll take just a couple more minutes to just introduce a couple of other elements of the MSc, and then I'll be handing it over so that we can hear from our alumni. Um, the other thing that I want to say, so those are the educational, kind of really broad educational components, or sort of the flow of the MSc program. In addition to that, you have, and all the resources that we have at Aleph and that you'll get within the classrooms, because we are a partner program with LJMU, you also have access to their library and databases. So there have, and even if you live near Liverpool, which has been the case with some of our students, you can even go and participate in some of the in-person student-oriented activities. You can go to the library physically. So there's some nice benefits of being affiliated with LJMU as well, just to have that additional sort of resource. Within Alef Trust, there are two additional uh, resource or support channels, I will say, that you get within the MSc. One is in the form of a personal tutor. So every student that enters the MSc, they are assigned a personal tutor. And that personal tutor, you'll be assigned a personal tutor, and there will be a group sort of associated with that personal tutor. So you'll have a group of students, peers, that will be in that same group as you, and you'll meet bi-monthly throughout all of the years of the program. But you'll also have the opportunity to meet one-on-one with the personal tutor. Now, this is the one person who really is going to sort of stay with you throughout the entire 3 years, right? You'll move from class to class and have different faculty, but the personal tutor stays with you throughout the entire program. In addition to the personal tutor, we also have well-being resources, which is um, has been developed and held by Cheryl Klaus. She runs webinars throughout the academic year, and then she also offers one-on-one well-being sessions, and those are available to all students at no cost, no additional cost, I should say. Um, we also have a learning support um, person who offers learning webinars and more sort of technical type webinars. So let's say you haven't written an essay in a very long time and you want to get some support around, well, how do I develop my ideas? How do I write an essay? What are some of the structural components that I want to pay attention to or I need to pay attention to? Those types of webinars and sessions will be held by the learning support. So we don't have all the space within the modules, right? The courses to be offering specific technical information around critical thinking and writing and research and things like that. So we provide that as an ancillary part of the program because we really want students to be successful in the MSc. So we often hear, and maybe our alumni can talk about this as well, but we often hear that the students feel, really supported in from various different angles throughout the MSc, which I think, can be really helpful in an online format, right? So that you don't feel like you're just always sort of by yourself with your screen, that there's really this community of support that is around you, both within the faculty and the staff, but also with amongst the students too, right? There's various different ways in which the students come together and connect with each other and develop lifelong relationships with each other within the Aleph community. So I think that's where I'm going to stop. I'm always aware that when we get to the Q&A, there's lots of other questions that come up, but I think I've offered some a good enough framing, at least to sort of get us started. And I'm going to hand it over to Francesca Hector, who's our community coordinator and also an alumna of the MSc and a current a PhD program student within our program. And she's going to introduce our alumni. But maybe, Francesca, you can also, I mentioned community just at the end. I don't know if you want to say anything about community as well as you're introducing Christiane.
Thank you. Thanks, Kendra, for super introduction to the program. And hello, everyone. Welcome to this open house session. Yeah, like as Kendra said, I'm Alef Trust's community coordinator and an alumna of the MSc program. And yeah, I'd just like to share a brief insight into the ALF community. And community really is at the heart of the MSc and all our programs. And we have students who join from very diverse backgrounds and then go on to apply their multidimensional learnings in their different fields. And we had an alumni hosted session just this morning with Chara, an alumna based in Australia. And she was sharing how the program has been a real catalyst for personal change rather than just an academic achievement. And she was reflecting on how her master's training, her dissertation research became a formative journey, how this led to a new job that she did not expect as program advisor, learning facilitator for psychedelics core training. And another recent alum, David, who's also in Australia, 4 in the morning for the Australians, so we send their apologies for not joining today. And yeah, he was sharing how he's now applying his learnings with Alef Trust to his day-to-day work with young people as a youth development worker. And he's integrating transpersonal perspectives into frontline youth work in grounded and meaningful ways. The organization he's working with is giving him quite a bit of scope to experiment and bring in new approaches, which is really working well. And another alumna, Alba, graduated a few years ago. She's just published a book about archetypal coaching, astrology, and dream work. And she launched this at the Watkins Bookshop in London in January. She's built a training around this. So it's lovely also to keep in contact with graduates. Community certainly doesn't end once the program finishes. And some MSc graduates change career, some continue with academia, but many more just deepen into what they were already doing professionally and personally from this transformational place that Kendra was speaking about. And it's kind of hard to speak about, but it's more a lived experience. And I'm delighted to introduce Christiane, who's with us, who graduated last year. Thank you for being here. Christiane, I wonder if you could share a little about your experience with the MSc program, something that was particularly meaningful for you, and answer any other questions that might come up and weave in other insights during today's session.
Of course. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you, Kendra, for your bit. It's funny, it makes me want to do it again. And that is actually one of the things that I was chatting with the other people who were in my tutor group just as we were coming to the end of our masters, was that you could literally do it multiple times and just choose a different pathway through it, and you'd have a completely different learning experience and learn totally different things, which I think is one of the things that makes it really unique. I remember being quite close to the beginning of my journey and again discussing with the tutor group about how on earth did they consolidate all of these different levels of learning into one 3-year course. It's quite extraordinary. And I would say, it's more of an ecosystem that they've created with the masters, rather than just a linear course that you start and finish and have a qualification and leave with a load of skills. It's kind of like an ecosystem, because I feel as though there's this real active drive to feed a new field, to grow it and develop it. And then there's quite a lot of awareness around how you might do that. Like my neighbor was also doing an MSc at the same time in psychotherapy, and her journey was so much different to mine. The things that she was being asked to do, we were sort of being asked to do the same task, but in 3 different ways, if you like, to develop all these different skills. So I found it really extraordinary. And I was one of those people that Kendra mentioned that I did a bachelor's degree when I was 18, and then I started the master's. I don't know, I must have been like 45 or something. And I hadn't written anything academic, probably hadn't even read anything academic since I left my bachelor's degree. but it was so brilliant because there was all the learning support, and it literally was just a case of, okay, just like forget everything, learn how to write an essay, have a go, and then just read the feedback and keep learning. And I just feel so lucky that not only did I learn all the information and my chosen pathway through, but then I learned how to communicate in an academic way and how to carry out research and all these other different things. That one of the really amazing parts is learning to use yourself as a research tool. Which is an amazing skill that can be applied in loads of different ways. So maybe if I just explain quickly how I have applied what I've learned, because I feel really passionate about that sort of navel-gazing stigma that comes with psychology and spirituality and so on. And I came into the program having worked in private practice as a shamanic practitioner stroke life coach. And I'd become really disillusioned because I just felt like people were actually paying me to help them use my understanding of spirituality to earn more money. I was starting to get like, oh my God, this is really wrong. I don't want to be part of this. I want to do something else. And then I actually had a really, really powerful dream where I was shown the details of the master's program in the dream. And I phoned the next day and I phoned Nick and said I'd had a dream. And he said, well, there's 5 days before the application closes, so you better get on with it. And then I actually found out later, like towards the end of my master's, that there were multiple people in my cohort who had had a similar dream. So I don't know which one of the faculty summons us all through a dream. Maybe Tadas, that's his research area. But basically, I didn't really know why I was doing the masters. The dream was so powerful that I just thought, I'm not even going to question it. I'm just going to do it. So I actually just blindly did it for about 2 years. And then after 2 years, it was almost as though there were enough parts of the puzzle that had entered into my knowledge system, if you like, I started to be able to see how you would apply shamanic practice to systems change. And then I literally picked a problem off the shelf, one that's prevalent, and developed an organization which launched a couple of months ago, where we have 10 amazing practitioners who offer shamanic healing to people who've experienced sexual violence. But we also educate about the oppressive systems that all intersect to create sexual violence and situate people not in their own individual healing journey, but more of like how they're part of a broken system. So the onus is not on them to heal, the onus is on the system to heal, but how can their individual healing journey help systems change, help the system to heal? And it was this kind of like mycelium network of how everything fitted together that grew in my multiple minds over the course of the 3 years and then came together. And then, these skills, like I remember doing Kendra's research design module in year 2 and just being like, what the heck? I can't get my head around this at all. But then doing my dissertation and absolutely loving it and, just feeling really proud of my output, going from, just passing my first paper to then doing really well in my dissertation. Just was, it was really rewarding and brilliant. And I've never learned so much in such a short space of time. It was extraordinary, and I couldn't be more grateful. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
That seems like thank you, Christiane. And it's wonderful actually to hear about what you've just created. I didn't know that that you had developed that program. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for everything that you shared.
Welcome.
It feels like this is a nice place to open up for question and answer and some discussion. So I'll hand it back over to Nick. Maybe you can help us facilitate that.
Yeah, feel free to either put in the chat window or if you have a question, raise your hand. Yeah, Anne Marie, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. I thank you so much to everyone who has spoken so far. It's very, very expansive in its energy, and I'm loving it. I'm really, really loving what I'm hearing. The three words I'm taking away so far are transformational. I think multiplicity was mentioned, and then lastly from Christiane, the multiple minds. And I was like, oh, this is really starting to feel like home. That feels really, really good to me. I guess I have two questions. And the first one was it was a fear. I'm definitely coming with a something about the academic element of the course. I have two bachelors in my background. I'm not a stranger to academia, but an MSc, it'll be my first master's, and that's obviously going to be a level up to what I'm used to. I wondered, is it possible to get a sense of the level of that's required? Even I thought to myself, will I be completely over out of my depth here? Is it possible to get a reading list of sorts of, look, this is the kind of stuff you'll be expected to integrate and engage with and read? I'm kind of wondering, and again, there's a little bit of anxiety in this. It's not all, I know I have a level of capacity with academia as well, but I suppose I wondered that, is that possible to have any kind of awareness of that before essentially joining? And the second question was, and just scheduling. I spoke to somebody I'm Dublin based. I spoke to somebody who is doing the course here a number of months ago, and I think she said to me that you should be considering, in terms of hourly commitment in your week, possibly 25 to 30 hours. I think she said maybe it's 15 to 20, but she was like, realistically, it's 25 to 30. And that's okay for me, but I'm just wondering, are they going to be on particular days? It'll be the scheduling bit that will be a factor for me with other life commitments, essentially. So I just wondered, is that possibly available? Maybe it already is. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Yeah, I'm happy to answer these two questions for you, and I appreciate you sharing the words, the themes that were coming up for you too. I just really appreciate you diving right in with that. Um, all the reading list, gosh, I wonder, I don't know if we have a reading list available for students before they enter the program. I know when students enter the program, we provide a summer reading list so that you have some time to prepare before the academic year starts, such as, the actual reading list that you'll be using for your first courses. But let me have a think about that particular piece for a minute, because maybe there's a couple of resources that perhaps we can just sort of link here, and or Christiane might have a note on some of the reading that she might want to just offer into this space. Um, the other thing that I'll say about that is that when students are accepted into the program, we also have a self-study course. It's a four-part critical thinking course that just goes over some of the basics of, we use American Psychological Association formatting. So there's some basics around that, because, we know that students come in with experience with all different types of writing formats. And then it goes over some critical thinking elements, critical reading, and critical research, so that we try to establish and support students just kind of even before the academic year starts with some of those what we consider to be some basic critical thinking skills, so that it helps maybe reduce some anxiety if you're feeling a little bit worried about how are you going to be prepared to enter into the program. The other thing that you asked about was the scheduling. So our program, while we teach live webinars, all of the webinars are also recorded. So we don't take attendance for the webinars, so it's not a requirement that students show up live to the webinars, because we recognize that students, for one, are all over the globe, and everybody has schedules that you're already navigating. So while we encourage live attendance to the webinars, because I think that there's a certain level that students perhaps get out of being there within sort of the the live space and there's ability to interact and ask questions. It's not a requirement that students attend live. With that said, we try to kind of stagger webinars throughout the program so that at least you're getting the ability, there is the ability for students to be able to attend live for some sessions if they can't attend other sessions. So it's really kind of a bit of a lexicon that we're working with, a bit of a web of webinars throughout the entire program that we try to put together to give students as much opportunity to be in live attendance as possible. And I would say what your friend told you is pretty accurate around the amount of time you're going to probably be dedicating towards the MSc in that 2025 hours a week. It can ebb and flow. Some weeks, there's maybe less requirement, but certainly on weeks that are building up towards the submission of an assessment, you might be spending more hours, towards writing an essay or completing a project or doing something along those lines. But I think it's good, yeah, to just sort of keep in mind that we say part-time, and part-time means kind of in that 20 to 25 hour range. And Christiane might be able to speak to that too, as far as what the level of time commitment looked like for her.
It's interesting, Anne-Marie, that you said about the anxiety. I completely remember having been given my place, just then descending into a pit of anxiety about am I actually even going to be able to understand what they're talking about. And at the beginning, I actually couldn't. The first module I found really difficult, and I somehow managed to blunder a just pass in that assignment. But then I just worked it out. It was really difficult. It was like learning a new language. It was like if you literally flew to another country, the first month you'd be like, oh heck, I don't know what anyone's talking about. But then you'd work it out. And I think what's brilliant about this master's and the way that the Alef Trust teach it is they want to encourage, my sense was, they want to encourage people from loads of different backgrounds, not just like hardline academics. So it is, I felt, really delivered to people who haven't perhaps been in academia for a while, or, and you can definitely pick a course through that is less academic than some. I think that was quite a nice thing that you could kind of choose. Like by the end of it, I was sort of craving a deeper academic experience. But at the beginning, I was like, oh my God, what does that even mean? Sitting there with Google going through every word of a paper that we were asked to read on the first module. But yeah, it's almost entertaining, the first module. Take it light.
Oops, sorry. Emery, I'd like to also add that this is not 52 weeks a year. Just to put into context, we do have the traditional academic schedule. So the first semester will start in late September. We are off for the month around Christmas, New Year's. There's a 2-week break in the spring, but I believe you're still doing some research and study work, but there will not be webinars scheduled. And then you're off the summer for about 3.5 months. So it can be worked to an individual schedule. So it's not continual. You have times where you can retreat. You don't have to think about it from there. Because to clarify, sometimes there are online programs that are continual. They'll go on for 2 years without a break, or you may have a few days break. But here you do have wide breaks.
Yeah, I'll just say to that as well. I have 2 kids and a full-time job, and I managed to do it. So it is definitely doable. But what I did was I sort of combined everything together. I factored my children into my project in the first year, and then by third year I had made my dissertation process part of my job. So that I found quite helpful to integrate the master, and that was one of the things that, and I remember in the application process, I'm saying we want you to integrate what you're learning into your work. So that was very helpful to do that. Saved a lot of time.
Valentina, please go ahead. Unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Nick and Kendra and Francesca for organizing. I'm really happy you organized this open day. I'm really excited to hear the personal experience from Christiane, and I wanted to ask two questions. One is, do you have more? You already have some publications on the website, but do you have some more dissertations or theses or any other recommendations I can read on and I guess get inspired? Because I already told Nick this, you have so many classes and I'm interested in all of them, and it would be nice to have maybe some more inspiration.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what might be the best sort of reading to offer, because I think our publications are a really good reflection of what students at Aleph are producing as far as, what the the topics that are explored in the program. And of course, as Christiane mentioned, those are really coming from personal experience. Um, there is the Wiley Blackwell Handbook of Transpersonal Psychology, which I think approaches a lot of different topics within the field of transpersonal psychology, and there are elements of that book that are, part of the required reading in year two. So that could be perhaps something to look into. That would be a suggestion. I know that there is another edition of that, a second edition of that coming out. I'm not sure if it's getting published this year, or next year. I don't know what the publication date is for that. So there's some revisions that have been made to the handbook because it was published, I think in 2013 was the original publication, and there's, been various developments within the field over the last 13 years. Yeah, and we, as a institute, we stay on top of what's the current research within our field. So it's like, even, the program that Christiane went through, the structural components of are all going to be, pretty much the same, and we'll have integrated new readings because it's, now it'll be, by the time next academic year starts, it'll be 4 years, I guess, since Christiane started the MSc, right? I think that's accurate math. Right. So we'll have incorporated whatever new readings have also come up in the last 4 years. But yeah, and also the Journal of Transpersonal Psychology is a great resource. There's also, if you are a Spanish speaker, there's the Journal of Transpersonal Research, which a lot of the publications are in Spanish. There are some of the articles within that um, journal are also in English, but it's each issue is sort of different, and that's an open resource. There's also the Journal of the Study of Spirituality, which is a great um, resource as well. So those are some larger databases, and it's not to say that those journals are exactly representative of the exact sources that we're offering within the Alef Trust, but there are some of them in there. It just kind of helps you get a little bit of a idea of kind of the breadth of the field and of the fields really that we're working with. Because we are, transpersonal psychology is a distinct field. Consciousness studies is a distinct field with its own sort of history of literature, and spirituality and contemporary spirituality, is also its own field. So, while we combined those, I mean, the degree is really looking at each of those fields together. I mean, we do interweave and look at and identify, ways in which they inform each other. But each of those, there's large databases that each of them sort of are represented by, I would say. But I think maybe that's a good place. There's a lot of digging that you all can do. And what's wonderful is that there's been a shift towards open source access to academic journals and things like that. So the Journal of Transpersonal Psychology, I think you have to be a member in order to read most of the articles that are on their website, but you can at least see the titles of journals. There are some students that have published in the Journal of Transpersonal Psychology. They've actually have taken their dissertation work and put it into article form and got published just a couple of years ago. I think there's a few students maybe, and I'm actually working with one student right now and working to help them shape up their dissertation into article form so that he can submit for publication within the next several months is sort of the timeline we're working with. So we do also work with students post-graduation if it's something that you're interested in doing. You want it, you're not quite sure how to go about publishing. We do work with students to help them achieve that goal.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Yeah, great. Thank you for that. I had a second question about the references. One of the sorry, what was it called? The references, two recommendations, and you wanted recommendations from, I guess, a university or some kind of educational institution. And I graduated about a decade ago, and I feel like that's so separate from what I've been up to and what I've been doing. So I never actually had a counselor. I did have someone to guide me through my thesis, but it feels so far away. So I was wondering maybe you could recommend me someone else I could ask for recommendations, or I don't know, who would be a good
All right.
person to ask.
Valentina, in instances when you cannot obtain an academic reference, then the next is to go someone who comes from a professional background.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's also a client or somebody who's very aware of your interests, your studies, but also can speak about it from a professional standpoint.
Mhm.
It's not just your friend or your cousin. Hey, you're a
Mhm.
great person and that, because that's how, uh, but who can speak to your interest, your drive, and sometimes if they can demonstrate it in some way. Sometimes people have taken their yoga training. So the yoga, like 300 hours, 500 hours. So they built up a relationship there. Sometimes the letter comes from them where they can demonstrate the applicant's participation, drive, interest in the course. So look at it from that way. There are different ways. And if you have questions, just contact me. We'll talk it through.
Thank you. That's good. Helpful. Thank you very much.
Bruna, thanks for joining us. Go ahead, unmute and ask your question.
Hello, thank you everyone. So I have two questions as well. The main one is I've never been in any type of formal studies in psychology. So I was wondering if this is one that can be recommended for someone that wants to become like a clinical psychology in the future, or if it's more like academical thing based on everything you showed us. I'm really interested in academical and research. I used to research a lot on my first degree, so I'm used to it, but not in psychology yet. And I was looking forward to become like a clinical psychologist in the future. So the first question is if this is a recommended course for that. And the second question would be regarding the entry requirements because my English not my first language, but I've been living in UK for 4 years now. If there is another way to prove my fluent on English, or if you need to do the TOEFL, the IELTS whatsoever, and yeah, more about that. Thank you.
All right. Our MSc in the UK is as a research degree. It will not confer licensure as a counselor or a therapist. And understandably so, you cannot become a counselor or therapist in a 100% online program. There are a lot of other components involved. As to the language requirements, it would be taking the IELTS or TOEFL test. And that's pretty easy now. Since COVID, you can do IELTS online. It's become much, much easier Pre-COVID, you would have to make appointments and sometimes 3 to 6 months planning. It's pretty quick right now. And what you would do, once you have the results in, then you attach that to your application. Or sometimes if we get a little later where we have to get everything in, we will not do the formal review until we have the results of the test, because it's so important in the British system about the essay. You do not want to put yourself at a disadvantage going into that. It undermines the student's self-esteem. So we want to make sure that the reading, the writing capacity is on that level, so you meet with success from the first day in. Okay, Nino, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for sharing and for creating this space to ask questions. I have two questions. I strongly resonate with this program, but I don't hold a bachelor's degree. So, in your experience, does this create any meaningful limitation in the admission process or in the training depth? And the second question is, since the training is fully online, how do you ensure that the embodied and somatic learning is transmitted effectively? Like, what limitations you have observed compared to in-person formats?
Kendra, I'll let you answer both of those.
Okay. For the first question, as far as admissions goes, we do have we do have this sort of open clause, if you will, that students or applicants who are interested in joining the MSc but don't have the bachelor's formal education, we will still consider applications, and we have had students come into the program with that sort of profile. Students or applicants are still required to submit all of the same application materials as any applicant to the program. Sometimes, depending on what the application looks like, we might ask for an applicant without a formal degree to maybe write something else, because we just want to make sure, as Nick had just previously mentioned, we want to make sure that if we're accepting you into the program, we want you to be successful. It's not just, we're not just accepting everybody who applies to the program, because we put so much effort and so much heart into the program. We care about our students in the program, and that really means we care about, ensuring that if you're applying and getting accepted into the program, that we feel pretty confident that you have the skills and the capacities. And sometimes it's not always clear in an application. So whenever that's the case, we might set up a meeting, or we might just require an extra piece of work or something that helps us just see a skill that perhaps we didn't quite see in the application to be able to make an informed decision. And of course, Nick has these application sessions that you might want to attend. Anybody here, you may want to attend, where he can go over some various different, you can have more of a conversation. Those sessions aren't recorded. I'll let him maybe as we close to talk about that piece. The second question, can you remind me? I didn't write it down, so then I'm not remembering it.
Yes, the second question was how can you ensure that the embodiment and the somatic learning is like experienced during the online sessions?
Yeah. This has been something that we continually work on as a faculty. And there are various elements that we bring in to our sessions. So we usually start our webinars with a centering. We teach lots of skills around how to take transitional pauses or stay connected to the body. And it's really, you know, the online environment maybe it's not a it's not the same as in person. I think that's easy to acknowledge, but it's not necessarily a barrier
Mhm.
to creating connection.
Yes.
And I think as, faculty who we live our embodiment to the best of our abilities, right, on any given day, and we work together and we talk, and we have been doing this. Most of the faculty that teach within Aleph have been teaching, some of them since the program started. I've been teaching for over 15 years within the field. There's just ways, there's techniques and that we have developed that we bring into the classroom environment. And of course, we encourage students also to do their embodiment work. This really comes in that first year. Um, it feels really not like, how do I explain it, right? When it's something that's really a felt experience that happens. And I'm wondering, Christiane, I know we're almost at the hour, but I'm wondering if there's something that you might want to say from the student perspective around this piece of embodied learning in an online environment.
Hmm. Um, I'm a really critical human being, and I never expect particularly good results from people and programs and so on. And I can honestly tell you, I think it's quite extraordinary how it's pulled off. It's almost pulled off without you even realizing. And you sort of look back and you think, oh my God, how did I even get that? I literally resisted that entire essay or experience. And I still somehow have come out with this extraordinary embodied learning. Um, it was my experience that the people that have crafted and hold and continue to craft this program collectively work together to create something that it's very hard to put your finger on how they've done it, because there are so many different minds and souls coming together to do it. I thought it was brilliant, and I'm highly critical.
Okay. I think we're coming to the top of the hour. Um, just Yvonne, if you have a short question, by all means, come on in.
Yeah, it might not be short. Thank you so much. I'm really excited as well. This is about Mino's first question. If you don't have a bachelor degree already. And so I wrote, there's an Aleph onboarding APA and academic writing course to yeah, prior to the course. So does one need to be scared of that? What does onboarding APA, what does that mean? And the writing course, what does it entail? If it's too long, the question, I can wait to the application online session, but
Kendra, do you want just like a 30-second answer to
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the APA is and the academic writing course is the course that I mentioned a little bit earlier today's session. It's a foundational course. It's 4 parts. It introduces students to the American Psychological Association, or APA, formatting and writing style, gives the basic structure of what that is, and then introduces writing skills, critical thinking skills, and researching skills. There are each section is a 30-minute webinar with some resources and then a little practice that you do. There's nothing that you have to, submit to say I've finished this course. It's really, sort of on the honor system, if you will, in that regard. But it is a basic course that's really designed to help students just get basic foundations in critical thinking and feel prepared to start the program. But of course, if there were other areas that you felt like you needed to kind of uh, be introduced to on your own, I'm sure that we could find, some resources to perhaps help orient you to feel more comfortable joining the program. And of course, as Nick put into the chat, right, students need to have some essential technological skills, the right kind of equipment. Again, we when we're looking at applicants, we're really looking at you know, applicants that have the skills and capacities to be successful in the program. And it may be, you know, when students are coming from all different backgrounds, from all different stages of education, and we have found that it's not, we haven't seen that as any one specific thing as being a specific barrier to being successful in the program. It's really about we're looking at the whole person, just like in the way that we approach our education, we're looking at the whole person when we're looking at your application.
Yeah. Sure, I want to be as prepared as possible so there are no backlashes. So this onboarding APA and academic writing course, when would I do it? Would I do it before I apply or in between application and waiting for further instructions, or when would be the best time to do so?
Yeah, it's after a student is accepted into the program, they then are given the information to access the course. Yeah, so it's usually done depending on when a student applies and when, you know, the timing of their acceptance. Students usually do that course sometime over the summer.
All right. Thank you, Kendra.
Mhm.
All right. I just put up in the chat, we do have what we call the application workshops. I do that usually 2 weeks after we do these sessions. They're not recorded. And we're a smaller group, we're one-on-one, we're talking anything you have to question or you want more information about the application process or the master's degree, just sign up and drop in. It's quite informal. And if not, just contact me directly. And then also, let me just, as a reminder, give you a link to the application and the resource page where we have all the information. And once again, just contact me. I'm your go-to person from when you start the application to your first day at orientation. You need something, just ask me, text me, email me. I'll know the answer pretty fast. I can also share with you other resources, especially with essay writing. For any of you who feel a little rusty, you may want to check with Coursera. They have a 5-part series on academic writing. You don't have to do all of them. It's very low cost, but it's a good way if you think you just need to get yourself the wheels turning again in your head on the framing of academic writing. Uh, we've had people, it's not just people who have not had a bachelor's degree, some who have not been in college for 20, 30 years, and you just need a quick refresh. That could be something any of you may want to explore now during March and April. You have plenty of time. And for those who do need the IELTS or the TOEFL, now's the time to do it. Don't wait till the last minute because it can take from 2 weeks to 8 weeks, depending on your country, timing, etc. So you don't want to rush this. You know, you want to take your time. You want to make sure you have a good application. Applications are not put together in an hour or two. So give yourself that space and that opportunity. So I want to thank all of you who've taken the time out of your day or evening to attend. On behalf of everyone here at Alef Trust, our alumni, thank you. A recording will go out in about 1 or 2 days. And for those who are viewing this afterwards, thank you again. So long, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.